Well, thank you very much for hosting Warren and myself. So if you think talent management is important, I hope our story and celebrating that with you will underscore that point. Before we get started, though, I really want to thank the faculty here at Pepperdine University for the invitation. This is significant to come and tell a practitioner's viewpoint with regards to how do you take theory into application. It's been just a great experience as part of being invited by Whit Kiefer. And so I see you, Jim, up in the audience, and thanking us to come and share our experience. And because it's been affirming, as well as we've learned a lot, and we've made course corrections along the way. As an HR practitioner, it's important that I continue to look at my own development and continue to push my edge as an executive, and that's why I've invited Warren Cinnick with us today. Warren presents a strategic thought partner role for me and continues to hold up the mirror with regards to what we are doing, what is happening across the industry, not just in healthcare, but certainly continuing to push us towards top-tier performance, and that's something that I look for. At Trinity Health, where I am the Chief Administration Officer, we've been at this journey for the last 5 years, really starting to build a foundation and that's core and very much linked to our core values and our mission, followed by key processes that is leading us to some significant outcomes. We're still in a learning journey, so having the opportunity to come and kind of juxtapose our results with other top Fortune organizations is critical as we look at where do we need to go, where is the puck going to skate next as we think about healthcare reform, and as a practitioner in this space, how do I help our leaders be positioned so that we can be nimble and flexible and be able to respond to the healthcare reform. So today we want to tell you a story about what it took in the last couple of years when there were some pretty significant economic challenges facing our organization. And how do we continue to invest in our talent? How do we retain our talent and continue to see increased retention and engagement across our leadership teams, continue to grow that talent internally? And I'm not here to share that, certainly we have learnings as well. We're not there yet. Again, we are looking to hardwire these processes as part of organizations where I've seen have had significant accomplishments in those areas. So let me start by just telling you a little bit about who we are as an organization. We are the 4th largest Catholic healthcare organization in the country. With over 47,000 full-time employees, about 55,000 if you count all the part-timers that we have participating with us across the organization. About 8,000 active staff physicians and growing as we think about the implications of healthcare reform and more physicians who want to align with us. 46 hospitals, and we're still looking for continued acquisition of more across the organization and looking at different marketplaces. We offer outpatient clinics, long-term home care and hospice, and celebrating over $7 billion in revenue this last fiscal year. So a great accomplishment in our achievements financially, and certainly maintaining our AA rating and continuing to invest in communities all across the country. So we talked earlier about, does talent management make a difference in the value proposition? And I'm here to say absolutely. As a HR practitioner, it's my role to continue to demonstrate and be that advocate for our people and continue to demonstrate that value proposition. I have partnered with my finance leaders to put together a human resource engine that demonstrates if I invest in these levers with regards to people, here's the value proposition and the evidence basis of our work as it drives a great care experience. When I can tell our executives that for every 1% of turnover we reduce across the enterprise yields $12 to $15 million in savings to the bottom line, it gets their attention. And certainly that's what this work is about, to demonstrate that value of our people to the organization. It accounts for over 50% of our OPEX, so it's definitely a lever that we control, that we influence, and that we want to help continue to grow and retain. So just a highlight of our accomplishments in some pretty tough conditions with regards to what was happening in declining revenue and the challenges with healthcare reform and what's on the horizon. As I mentioned earlier, certainly the success in our revenue, continuing to acquire more hospitals, maintaining our AA rating, exceeding budget on days cash. This year we'll invest over $700 million in capital investments to upgrade our hospitals and continue to give back to our communities and to our people. We have been recognized by Thomson Reuters as a top hospital system and continue to see improvements in our clinical grade point averages, as well as the mix that we're seeing with regards to outpatient and inpatient, and what does that mean strategically as we look at positions for talent management, and how does that inform what we may need to do for the future. I'm proud to say that in our people category, we have identified successors, not necessarily ready A for every position, meaning ready now, but certainly there is a process that is being hardwired. It's taken us 5 years, and my vision is how does this work have the cadence and the rhythm and the significance like a business operating plan review. So our people review is just as significant. We hold our people accountable. We tie it to their incentive, to all of our performance management systems, as Kevin indicated, as a best practice. We've installed technology. I was quite surprised when I joined Trinity of just how far back we had been in technology. So we're getting to that place of getting a little bit more advanced. Still not there yet, but certainly introducing more and more advances to automate. And to have tools that really help our leaders, because many times they don't know what they don't know. And what Warren will share later is just the significant contribution that Pricewaterhouse has played in providing tools and processes and scripts that really help take the complexity out and helping our leaders engage in those dialogues. And then we've continued to see great improvements in our retention and associate engagement scores as measured by Gallup, and just seeing the commitment of our leadership team with regards to doing what's necessary to get through some of the economic challenges. Productivity, and Kevin highlighted this before, is kind of a correlation in best practice. We have continued to see great strides in productivity. Over $200 million in performance improvements, and I'm proud to say that over 3/4 of that driven by a lot of process improvement changes. $50 million of it I contributed with the retirement pension redesign that we did last year, and we'll be contributing about $150 million in savings this next year in different process redesigns just within the HR space. So it's just significant to see what could happen as you rally the team and you rally around a cause and create that followership and commitment to people. And then a common executive information dashboard so that we are all at parity with what does success look like. What is the burning platform? What is the direction, the vision of the organization, and how do we all hold each other accountable? So it's been a tough environment. As you see what's happening across healthcare, we haven't seen this type of significant change since the advancement of Medicare back in the 60s. And as you look at the basis of competition, just how we think about care and what that continuum of care is going to look like, and how does that influence our business strategy, our people strategy, and then tactics to close that gap. How do we connect? How do we become more integrated? And what are the opportunities for innovation? So it's significant. And it's one that as a choice, we've made it as an organization to take that by the lead and look at what we can do creatively to really advance what do we need to do to solve and meet these waves of change. So Warren's going to talk a little bit now about taking it up broader with regards to what's happening out there in the industry to take a look at.
So while we've been chatting a bit about the environment for healthcare, part of my task is not only to work with healthcare organizations, but also with industrial companies, with banking and financial institutions on the topic of talent management. So my background is broader than that. And Kevin this morning raised the General Electric model. I'm a graduate of that world. I was there for 13 years in human resource roles, and so grew up under that methodology. and know that that doesn't work in every culture. That doesn't work in every kind of setting in every industry. And so we can chat a little bit about that when you get to questions, if you like. One of the things that Deb indicated is the tremendous change in the environment of healthcare, but I would indicate from my experiences that over this last 2 or 3 years as the economy suffered, that up here there's a continuum of the way all types of management teams responded, from the rather unsatisfying ones at the bottom where they denied that there was great change happening, that they denied a change in their own behaviors, and in fact ended up in bankruptcy court or ended up in a very difficult situation for their brands, all the way on up to setting a vision for a new way of operating in their industry, a new way of acting, and a new way of moving their entire industry forward, depending on the way they position their organization or their brand. And I would ask you to take this one away and think about it with respect to the organizations you're a part of, the companies you interact with, the clients you might deal with, and do a little grade for yourself among those companies. Where did the management teams that I know, that I am in contact with, that I touch base with, where did they end up when they responded to the changing outside world? How did they react along this scale? And I think you'll find it's a great place to start a conversation with management teams about what needs to change and how they need to react to the outside environment. With respect to Trinity, we found a mix. We found some certain local systems that said, gee, it'll come back. The volume will return. We'll get better, use of our hospital space. We'll get better use of the services we've had. Other places said this is a sea change. This is something that's going to be a remarkable change in our environment. Let's get ahead of it. Let's get new products and new services offered to the patients in our communities. And so even inside of a Trinity, you had different responses along this range. And I think it's a good place anywhere to start to do that self-assessment and to do that self-evaluation.
So let's talk a little bit about the point of view of leadership. So I mentioned earlier, a couple of years ago, we were faced by a pretty significant operating gap, almost $500 million, in order for us to make plan by January of the end of the fiscal year. And so our leadership team really gathered together to create an inspiring vision, to determine what was that burning platform and what did we have to do as we manage talent to really sustain our ministry. And in fact, we put together an entire project called Sustaining the Ministry. And our president and CEO, Joe Swedish, talked about 3 critical elements to that plan. And it was about leadership and a commitment and clarity about where were we going? What do we stand for? What was our purpose as an organization? And putting together some very succinct messages that we would cascade across the organization and link it and integrate it to, again, all of our culture work, our onboarding, and just how we orient and hire, quite frankly, individuals to come join our organization. Strengthening our business model and really driving accountability. When you think about it, all we do all day is have conversations. And so how do we ensure the robust nature of those conversations that really drive results and outcomes? And really being specific about what success looks like and holding our leaders accountable for those results. And finally, accelerating what we've trademarked called Unified Enterprise Ministry Integration. So the notion of unity as we think about the transformation of Trinity Health, which was a holding company, and moving to an operating company with a common ground, common values, common mission, common guiding behaviors, which I'll talk about in a moment, that really help us live our values. An enterprise, and looking at how do we manage risk through the organization. In a Catholic organization, we are very risk averse. People talk about and joke about being Catholic nice and about not being direct with one another and authentic. And so how do we change that in the spirit of driving accountability and execution? And then integrating, as we look at the linkages of all of our work, and we're all after the same thing, and how do we leverage the strength, the momentum of the brilliance in really coming to a common ground and common outcome, and it's about execution. So when we think about it, changing healthcare, the impact is certainly external in terms of that impact that healthcare reform will have. But we've thought about it a little bit differently in changing healthcare from the inside out and really looking at the dynamics of how we operate as a leadership team and all across our ministry organizations, which are our hospitals, to become more integrated, to really focus on the patient and looking at the care continuum and how do we integrate all of our processes throughout. Position us for better risk and performance that's accountable, and certainly you know, taking those bold steps and doing what's necessary and inviting that innovation and rewarding that innovation throughout the enterprise to get us those results. So as we started the journey and we invited Pricewaterhouse to come help us be our strategic thought partner and bring some expertise, we started to really look at what was necessary. And the first step was creating this standard of excellence that really helps our associates and leaders to understand, well, what will success look like? And how will I remain focused to our mission, even during these tough, difficult times? And part of it was setting expectations. And we held an executive meeting where we invited all of our CEOs across the enterprise for all of our hospitals and our senior executive team. And we drafted some guiding behaviors. And these are statements that really help us bring to life our values. Then through the help of Pricewaterhouse, really took them and expanded on supporting statements for each one of those guiding behaviors so that it's clear. There's a roadmap of what success looks like. So no matter where I reside in the organization, I know what success and how I be measured with regards to these particular behaviors. It's almost like an internal team agreement that the organization has continued to cascade to every one of our associates. These guiding behaviors are then woven into our performance management processes, our onboarding, our interviewing processes, so they're deep and continue to be cascaded through the organization. So that we leverage the best features of our UEM because we have a common goal, a common platform that then drives processes and helps us weather through these challenges because we have permission, because it is safe, to be direct, to be clear, and help one another in terms of moving that performance so that we can continue to provide a personal care experience because at the end of the day, that's what it's about. How do we think about relationships that really drive engagement, that drive loyalty, that drive that great experience every time, that help us live into becoming our vision of being most trusted health partner for life? And so this is taking that construct so that you can see how these elements fit. So our guiding behaviors apply to all of our associates. We also have leadership competencies. And I'll talk a little bit about how we adjusted some of those leadership competencies, and then job and technical competencies that are specific and related to those particular functions, and how those all work together integratively as part of what we want to see and how we measure success for our leaders, and how they apply as part of that standard that I talked about as kind of that enabler, that core foundation that's critical in driving outcomes. So bringing it to life, these are the guiding behaviors in each of these core areas, and we continue to test them to see their viability. Are they working for us? Are they supporting our business strategy? And if they're not, what are we doing to course correct, to adjust, to do some things differently? I'd like Warren to maybe talk a little bit about what we did in the leadership competency space, because we had some very traditional competencies when I first arrived at Trinity Health, and it evolved. And so taking the time to go through a comprehensive assessment to really challenge those competencies and what do we need differently, and how did that process evolve to what you see today as these 4 key areas of leadership competencies.
Yeah, let me bring you into the kitchen now a little bit. So when we were developing the recipe for developing these competencies and putting them in place, implementing them, the issue we ran into culturally was the system really likes its words. It loves its vocabulary, and it loves to write. And so we found competencies in the level of 30 to 40 in terms of the number of distinct elements that people were holding one another accountable for, either at a local level or at a system level. And I don't know what you think about that, but when you get a syllabus from one of your professors or when you've tried to do any sort of a project and it has 30 or 40 things that are absolutely positively important you've got to do, you know someone is not prioritizing. And so one of the tasks we really had to take the group to was, let's prioritize. Let's understand how these 30 or 40 can be boiled down into elements that will sustain over the long haul, that will be inclusive, and that can modify based on environmental situations. The first list there are the guiding behaviors, and you'll notice these read very differently than the competencies you might find at a non-faith-based organization, okay? These are very much about that individual conversation that we have with one another, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's in the clinical setting, whether it's in the care of a family member or the care for the patient. These really touch at the heart. And you know, for a cold place like a PwC, full of accountants and full of, you know, all sorts of attorneys and that, this doesn't seem like the typical stuff PwC would, you know, play around with. But what it shows you is that behind it is the science or the methodology of good thinking. The details of it can very much be very personal, very much spiritual, and very much cultural. And so these are ones that the organization is very proud of. People hold one another inside of Trinity accountable to these behaviors day to day, and we'll call each other on them. We're not giving you here all the detailed steps underneath, but each one carries 5 or 6 behavioral indicators for what you would act like to be effective in each. The 4 below really got focused on the strategy of developing from a holding company to an operating company. So the specific behavioral indicators underneath these are about moving from place A to place B. My bet is 5 years from now we'll revisit the behavioral competencies underneath these and go to the next level and say now we've reached an operating model that's efficient, that's effective, that is repeatable. How do we now move it to the level of even higher excellence and still stay under these 4 main categories? So those are some of the, I brought you into the kitchen now a little bit as to how these got there. The conversations were very you know, animated and were very passionate in terms of where they ended up, and that's a good thing for organizations. When there's passion around what the model ought to be, that shows you a lot of commitment to trying to move the organization forward to success.
So I think one of the other things you did that was very good was looking at our leadership competencies of our top performing Gallup leaders. And what was the makeup of their performance? What clues and observations did it show us as part of their behaviors and their leadership competencies? And then interviewing the bottom performers so that we could understand and calibrate where we needed to focus and where we needed to drive change with regards to these leadership competencies. Transformation happens on a personal level. And so that the notion of having one conversation at a time, transformation happens one person at a time. And so our model is, and the way we've done a lot of our leadership and learning interventions focuses on the I, the self, then the we as part of my own team, and then it, the organization. And as we think about what we need across the organization, how we package that, and how do we reinforce that as part of what success looks like in these particular models for outcomes. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I really want to capture the highlighted section because this is what we really focused on the last 2 years as we identified the economic challenges, what it was going to take for us to really close the financial gaps, the gaps we were seeing with retention and turnover, and to continue to drive and become a healthy, high-performing organization. There were shifts in certain of our leadership competencies that really needed to be magnified, and that's where we put a lot of our time and attention as we looked at our talent management plan. And what were the learning solutions that we needed to put in place, or were the type of leaders maybe we needed to attract who brought this particular discipline or expertise to help us continue to lead. In those areas around communication, trust, vision, aligning resources, and change leadership. So that became, as you think about how do I take information and clues of what's happening in my business environment with regards to my strategy, and how do I link it to my HR strategy and ultimately link it to tactics and initiatives that I need to put in place in order to close the gap. So this is an illustrative, if you think about the leadership characteristics, and then how do I infuse communication, guiding them and measuring them, and these are activities that we put in place in order to close those gaps where we were seeing and where we needed a shift in those leadership competencies. And then how do we measure? So at the end of the day, what have you done for me lately? And so the measures on retention, the measures on engagement, and looking at a lot of the measures that Kevin shared earlier as part of the percentage of internal promotes, external hires, the days to fill, and there are many, many other metrics, but keeping those on the forefront and the awareness of what we need to do in order to make that change and make that shift. So challenges ahead, a quick quote from Atul Gawande. He came and spoke to us last year at our Clinical Leadership Conference, really talking about healthcare reform and what it's going to take, and it really counts on local communities and clinicians for success. And so part of how do we align together as part of this effort. And so in closing, a couple of more slides, what change is required? And certainly the adaptation to payment system, lots of change is the headline message as part of what we have to do as a leadership organization in order to meet these particular demands around cost, IT, growing the business, continuing to advance community benefit, and then most importantly, developing our leadership organization with the depth, the flexibility, to be able to move and be positioned for change so that we are proactive and not reactive and we can do things well in advance. And so I'll turn it over to Warren to kind of just further points of view and leadership considerations as we can follow up on our story.
I'll just quickly take us out the backside here. So if we broaden it out from healthcare, broaden it out from the specific case of Trinity Health, what are the kinds of things organizations face in these difficult economic times? And I like to highlight that middle section, the reliance on high integrity leaders, the ability to be clear and focused, to set priorities, to communicate more openly and more regularly, more frequently, to be decisive and to take action. It's okay to be wrong, you can reset, but move forward rather than be standing still, and to develop your talent. Those kinds of things in the down times seem to be distinguishing factors among many of our clients in terms of relatedness to success. And so I wanted to share those with you as kind of a takeaway element here. And in these extreme times, re-equipping yourselves as leaders, as audience members here, I think is a time, is an opportunity for you to reassess also and say, what are the things that I need to do to onboard? What are the new skills I need to have to be effective in these difficult times?
So in summary, you see the whole package come together, focused on those three elements around leadership, clarity, accountability, and driving execution. We didn't go into every minute detail. We're certainly available, and I am, and certainly invite you if you're ever in Michigan to come learn more and to continue our story. But it's been a great one, and we're still on that path to continue greatness and continue to adjust our plan and continue to grow talent. So thank you again for the opportunity, and I'm happy to entertain questions.
Hi. You mentioned that you're implementing a lot of technology right now and still getting caught up. Is that for employee retention, or is that more of a move, because the move from a holding company to an operating company?
I think it's a both and. I mean, part of what we need is an enabling discipline, if you will, around the value of leveraging technology that this organization didn't invest in the past. And so from a retention standpoint, the tools that we have employed really help an engagement standpoint because they're rich with training features and examples to really get our leaders engaged in giving conversation and coaching scenarios because they have access to those tools. From another point of view with regards to just the calibration of talent. So today, I can't press a button and tell you at a moment's notice how many people are employed right now at Trinity Health. And as an HR leader, that's unacceptable. And so, the investment in PeopleSoft that we're putting all across the organization so we have a common platform, but more importantly, a common platform to calibrate talent so that as we look at what Ready A's and when I have openings across the enterprise, I can in a moment identify where are the potential pools of candidates coming from. So we're 3/4 done, and we'll be done in the next year with regards to that implementation. And it's going to be fabulous to be able to have access to that data because data drives results and certainly helps to continue to demonstrate that value proposition, as Kevin articulated this morning in many of his examples. As I watched your heads in the room nod with regards to just the compelling arguments. Does talent matter? Absolutely.
My question, I'm curious about your guiding behaviors in terms of identifying those, as Warren said that it was probably a very interesting conversation putting those together. Mm-hmm. Did you at some point tie any type of measurement system to that? And if you did, I'm just curious how you would measure something like that.
So great question. A key to shaping culture is the integration of all this work to your strategy, to your structure, and to certainly underscore your mission and vision and values. So our first step was incorporating them as part of the leadership performance appraisals. So in the Success Factors software, which is a performance management tool, we added all the guiding behaviors along with the supporting statements and put measurements in there with regards to how are they showing up as part of modeling those behaviors. And so we can show you that in terms of that level of detail, in addition to their technical competencies. So it's not just what we do, it's how we do it. And in our organization, how matters as we look at how we are a model and a mentor to continue to sustain our ministries and promote that throughout our communities and what we stand for. We also use it in other performance conversations. We start every one of our meetings within our organization with either a reflection or prayer, and we put the guiding behaviors as part of all of our agendas, so the awareness of those guiding behaviors everywhere. I was displeased recently where we had some outside consultants coming to visit our organization, and one of their just unsolicited comments where it's just amazing to watch how these guiding behaviors have just taken life and have really become part of who you are, and people refer to them. And part of, as we put the construct together with Warren, was how do we look at a model that is simple, that is lasting, and that will stick to the average many? So that, think about, no one showed you how to use your ATM card. It's an overused example, but that's what we want. We want it to be intuitive. When I say, let's support each other in serving our patients and our associates and our customers, you know what that means. When I say, be fully present, you understand what that means in a meeting, in a different setting, or a one-on-one discussion. It's clear. And we're still on that journey of continuing to cascade it deeply, but it's really taken hold in defining who we are. And I think that's the success of any talent management model is how does this become and define who you are? And I've had the privilege of working in some pretty significant Fortune 50 companies where the people strategic operating plan is just as important as the financial plan, and that process is just highly regarded and incentivized as part of managing talent. Great questions.
Excellent. I've got several questions, but I'm going to save it for the panel.
Okay, thank you.
But thank you very much.
Thank you very much.